The Steam Deck is a fantastic PC gaming handheld. Before it, there were plenty of other PC handhelds, but very few people were interested because all of them were just way too expensive. When the Steam Deck launched 4 years ago, it was $400. It was cheaper than every other PC handheld out there, but it was also better than every other PC handheld out there at the time. But just because something is great, and the Steam Deck absolutely is, doesn't mean that it couldn't be better. So I decided to ask some of my friends that use a lot of different handheld PCs what they thought. I asked Carrie, aka The Fox, Tech Dweeb, Jimmy Champagne from Deck Ready, Rich from Fan the Deck, Aiden Walls, Dammit Jeff, Russ from Retro Game Core, Baldly Rudy, and Bob Wolf. If 4 years ago they were making the Steam Deck, what would they have changed about it? And by the way, if you feel like this video is too negative, trust me, all of us are big fans of the Steam Deck. In fact, I have another video that I'll link down below so you can check it out at the end of this one of all the reasons that we think that the Steam Deck is awesome. So if that sounds good, let's jump in. But first, I gotta keep the lights on. This video is sponsored by Titan. Whoa. Okay, hold on. I see that you're thinking about skipping the ad, but this one's important to everyone that sleeps. And unless you're a zombie, yes, sleep. But if you're not getting good enough sleep, then you end up feeling like a zombie when you wake up in the morning. This is the Titan Elite. First off, when it arrived, it was in this box that I thought was way too small to be able to hold a mattress. This made it a whole lot easier to get up the stairs and around corners. Unboxing it was simple. As soon as you pull off the plastic, it expands to its full size. The Titan Elite has a built-in Glaciotex Plus cooling cloud pillow top. The top is designed to wick away heat and keep you at the ideal temperature while you sleep. It feels absolutely great to sleep on with just the right amount of firmness. Plus, it doesn't transfer movement to your partner, so you don't have to worry about waking them up if you're flipping over. Because Titan ships straight from the factory to you, there's no middleman taking a cut. This means that they can use premium materials without bringing up the cost. And all of their mattresses are designed in Arizona by master craftsmen who have been building mattresses for over 30 years. So if you want to stop feeling like a zombie in the morning, check out the link in the description down below and get yours today. And it comes with their free 120-night sleep trial and a lifetime limited warranty. So visit titanmattress.com/nerdnest to get 30% off your order with code NerdNest at checkout. Huge thanks to Titan for sponsoring this episode. Now you can watch the rest of the video, but I think I'm going to take a nap. Carrie, first off, tell us about your channel.
Hello everyone, my name is The Fox. I run the YouTube channel The Fox, and I've been looking at PC gaming handhelds for almost a decade now, trying to make the most out of PC gaming handhelds.
That's a really long time. I think of all of us, you've been doing this the longest. We know you're a fan of the deck, but what is your least favorite thing about it?
It's greatness. What is my least favorite thing about the Steam Deck? All right, so this is my least favorite thing about the Steam Deck is probably that it almost feels like there's wasted space. I think ultimately that is my biggest gripe for it, is that either there should be a bigger battery in there somewhere, because we've seen devices that are small that have a bigger battery. We've seen devices that weigh less while having a bigger battery. The Ally X is like 680 grams with an 80 watt hour battery, and the Steam Deck OLED is 640 grams with a 50 watt hour battery. So, I mean, also the screen size, it seems like we can get a bigger screen in there. It just seems like some of the proportions of the device are more geared toward ergonomics first rather than anything else, since they have that space. So I think that is probably, out of everything, the thing that I like the least about the Steam Deck is a misuse of the ample space that they have available to them.
You know, it's funny because for me, the ergonomics are the reason why the Steam Deck is so great. And I do agree that Valve did ergonomics first and everything else was secondary, which I personally appreciate. That said, while the Ally X and other devices that are like it are not as comfortable as the Steam Deck, they're all pretty comfortable. I think you got a pretty good point there. Next up, you know him, you love him. He needs no introduction, but if you insist on one, I will let it come from the hands themselves.
Hello there, TechDweeb here, your friendly internet buddy that is more or less a pair of disembodied flapping hands. Also, I'm a big fan of the Steam Deck. You'll catch me talking about that thing all the frickin' time.
All right, you know the question, Dweeb. Have at it.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I don't mean the beholder from D&D, although I do find them kind of beautiful. No, I mean that everyone finds different things beautiful. I bet there's even someone out there that finds you beautiful, if you can believe that. So with that in mind, I'm not here to tell you what you should find beautiful. And if you like the look of the Steam Deck, then hey, I'm happy for you. But I really, really don't. The Steam Deck is not a beautiful thing, in my opinion. It's ugly as heck. I always thought it was ugly from the moment it was first revealed and even when I got one. The limited edition versions are nicer looking, but even they don't really do it for me. I always thought of the Steam Deck as a function over form kind of thing. Actually, when I first got one, it really reminded me of the Game Gear, the original Game Gear. Just a chunky, soft-edged black chunk of plastic tech without any real class or style to it. There are lots of handhelds I love the look of, but the Steam Deck isn't one of them. I hope they snazz it up a bit for the Steam Deck too. It could be so much more interesting. Although considering their new console is literally just a black square with no defining features whatsoever, I don't have high hopes.
I feel like this kind of builds on what Carrie was saying before. Valve designed for ergonomics first and everything else second. And when you look at the Steam Deck, I think the aesthetics was a very distant third. Comparing it to the Switch 2, for example, the Switch 2 feels like a phone in terms of build quality. It's sleek, it's premium feeling, but not nearly as comfortable as the Deck. I personally think that Valve made the right decision here, but you are not wrong. This is function over form 100%. And the boringness of the Steam machine is all because of those trade-offs that Valve has gone with. But that's what I love about it. I hate the look of the PS5. I prefer a boring black box under my TV like the Xbox Series X. Something that doesn't stand out or call attention to itself. But I'm getting off track here, and since I'm off track, listen. I'm this close to 100,000 subscribers here on the NerdNest. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you should give it a shot. It's free. Okay, I got way off track there. Jimmy, save us.
How's it going, NerdNest viewers? My name is Jimmy Champagne. I run the channel Deck Ready. It's a content hub for everything related to Steam hardware. That's the easiest way I can describe it. The biggest issue with the Steam Deck is 100% the verification system because it's functionally useless. Like, the idea is sound, right? Like, a check mark should mean the game works and runs fine on the Steam Deck. The unsupported badge should mean it doesn't work, and that's not reality at all.
Yes, thank you. I've been saying this since the Deck was first released.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of games that are listed as unsupported that work just fine. A big example that just got a highlight on Steam Deck HQ is Skyrim. That game is listed as unsupported. It works just fine on the Steam Deck. And then on the other side of the coin, you have a bunch of games that have the green check mark that don't run well at all on the Steam Deck. I remember when The Last of Us Part 1 came out on Steam, it was Steam Deck verified at launch and it didn't run. It was terrible. It was like 15 FPS. It had issues with textures. It was not a game that should have been verified. And instead of improving on it, Valve has just expanded it to other devices. So like if you have SteamOS on a PC, you'll see the verification system for that. If you have SteamOS on your Legion OS, it has its own verification system, and it's just as useless no matter what device you use it on. So if Valve's gonna fix anything, I would hope it would be the verification system because it is not good.
Well, Jimmy, I have news for you. Although, just so you guys know this who are watching this right now, Jimmy sent this video to me months ago, but they are working on it. This is being fixed, or at least it seems like it. Valve is giving players the ability to optionally report FPS data back to Valve, and then when you get asked if you agree with Valve's verified rating or not, if you disagree, they're now going to give you an option to tell them why. So do everyone a favor and make sure that you actually give Valve that data, because that's going to improve things for all of the rest of us. Anyway, thanks, Jimmy. And I have a video that's all about that. I will also link that down below. All right, next up is my very good friend Rich, aka Fan the Deck.
What's good, Deck Gang? I am Rich from Fan the Deck, and I've been making videos about the Steam Deck since before it was released, so I know how awesome the Steam Deck is, but I also know the things that are not so great. So today I'm working with Bill on NerdNest, and I want to tell you about my least favorite thing about the Steam Deck. Now, the way I wanted to think of this is what makes me pick up something other than the Steam Deck, and the best answer I can give you there is that sometimes when my son wants to play a game, especially when we're traveling, he often is going to want to play Minecraft, Fortnite, or Roblox. And those are the times when I pick up something other than the Steam Deck, at least for him. So in that case, I would say that my least favorite thing about the Steam Deck is not enough support for anti-cheat games. Now, this is not Valve's fault, and you can't say that they haven't done a lot to fix this problem, but it is still a problem nonetheless. Like I said, my son plays Minecraft, Fortnite, and Roblox. Now, I do have my concerns about some of those games, but I monitor how he's playing them, and to be honest, these are social hubs for him and his friends. All of his friends are playing one of those 3 games, and so when it comes to his screen time, 9 times out of 10, that's how he's going to want to spend it. He's going to want to spend it in one of those 3 games playing with his friends. And as you know, these games are just not supported on Linux, even when it comes to SteamOS and Steam Deck. Like I said before, Valve has gone above and beyond here. They've done a lot of work to make Linux an approachable operating system when it comes to kernel level anti-cheat. But to be honest, Valve doesn't like kernel level anti-cheat. Still though, as far as they've gone, they may even go further in the future. On the Games for Everyone podcast, one of the co-hosts, Nick, mentioned how maybe it's possible that Valve could do some sort of kernel hot swapping such that they could provide a kernel that is friendlier to kernel level anti-cheat and have that be swapped in only for the games that need it. That said, I think that developers would still need to support it. And the only way that this is going to change from a long-term perspective is for more people to be using Linux. The more people that are using Linux, the more financial incentive that these developers have to support Linux. So I am hopeful that this problem will be solved over time. Their Linux adoption is growing and growing, and a lot of developers are really into the SteamOS, Steam Deck scene. But until anti-cheat support improves, the Deck can't really be the family gaming device that I do want it to be.
You know, I think a lot of us are lucky that the games that aren't supported on the Deck due to anti-cheat and DRM, they're the games that we tend not to play very much. But for anybody that does like those games in particular, the Deck is absolutely the wrong system to get. For those people, I think I would recommend something like the ROG Ally X or the Lenovo Legion Go S. I think that those are the ones that to focus on. That's where but the issue is that Windows tends to perform worse on many games than Linux does. And where handhelds are, performance is really like the choking point on that. So it's a big limitation, and you're getting even more of a limitation by not using SteamOS. But if those are the kinds of games you play, then you really don't have a choice. All right, Aiden is up next. He does a lot of retro gaming videos as well as interviews of a lot of the people that you've seen in this video. So make sure you check out his channel as well as everyone else's. They'll all be linked down below that like button. Aiden, what is your biggest complaint about the Deck?
Hey everyone, my name is Aiden Walls. My most famous or successful Steam Deck video is about how the Steam Deck is better than the PS5. Very controversial. I think the go-to complaint with a device like the Steam Deck is battery life, but I think they have, the most optimized system out of everything available. So I'm not going to complain about that. I'm going to complain about the size. The longer I've owned it, the more I've just found the fact that they created space for the trackpad, and then above that, they've put the D-pad and the joystick next to each other, and then the same on the other side. It just makes it too long. It's just a massive blob. And I find devices that compromise a little bit on ergonomics to jam those controls in there, I end up using them more, even though they're less ergonomic. So my least favorite thing is just the size.
And we're going to go all the way from South Africa over to Los Angeles, which I actually used to live there a million years ago. Jeff, what would you change if you were designing the Steam Deck 4 years ago?
Now, don't get me wrong. This was really hard for me to answer because I really have very few complaints about the Steam Deck. It's one of my favorite handhelds ever. But if I had to pick something, honestly, the battery could probably use some work. Listen, I love this thing, and for lightweight games, it's really, really nice. But play anything even just a little bit more intense, and my playtime drops down to like 35 minutes. That's just not good enough for me for a handheld anymore. Now, I know you could probably, TDP limit your device or cap the frame rate or use FSR to lower the burden on the device and everything, but let's be honest, that's just treating the side effects instead of addressing the actual disease. It's falling behind compared to everyone else, which, fair. It's getting a little old. But a pretty bad battery life would definitely be one of those things that prevents the Steam Deck from becoming my perfect everything handheld.
It's funny that when the Switch 1 originally came out, the biggest gripe that people had with it was the battery life. And the battery life on the Switch 1 was about what the battery life is on the Steam Deck now. But even though the APU on the deck is really efficient, it's held back by a 40 watt hour battery on the OG Steam Deck and a 50 watt hour battery on the OLED Steam Deck. And like Carrie said earlier, there's a lot of empty space inside the deck. You look at the massive change from the ROG Ally to the ROG Ally X. They really packed a lot of battery in there. I'd love to see a chip as efficient as the APU that's in the Steam Deck, but paired with a massive 80 watt hour battery. That could let you play for a ridiculous amount of time. You wouldn't need to have a cord. You wouldn't need, it would just be awesome. Russ, you have about 3,000 handhelds in your studio. What could the deck do better?
Hi, how's it going? My name is Russ. I run a channel called Retro Game Core. I mostly focus on snacks and drinks, but sometimes I do also talk about electronics, mostly retro handhelds, those that will emulate my favorite games, but I also play around with PC handhelds too. So the thing about the Steam Deck for me is that I don't have a lot of negatives for it. I've got a couple nitpicks, like I don't like the fact that the etched glass screen is the most expensive one, because I think that the one with the most internal storage should have a glossy screen when it comes to OLED. And so, for example, that's one that's a little bit weird for me. So I have to buy the middle range one, which I guess now is the low spec option. And then I put in my own internal storage, but I'd rather just have a 1 terabyte SSD in one directly from Valve. And so that's a nitpick that I have. Another one would be that it is quite big. You know, it's a big handheld PC, but it's also super comfortable. So again, that's not a huge negative for me. In general, I just think it's an awesome machine. So if I had to pick my least favorite aspect of the Steam Deck, it isn't really a hardware issue, but rather just an aspect of the overall Linux and SteamOS experience, and that is that some games just don't work for it. And a lot of it has to do with anti-cheat that's at the kernel level that unfortunately doesn't work with Linux machines. That includes stuff like Call of Duty and Fortnite and Destiny 2, and that's one of my favorite games of all time. And so that's kind of the big one for me, is I would love to see Destiny 2 on a Steam Deck without having to go through the hassle of installing Windows on the machine, which I think kind of defeats that purpose. In a perfect world, we would also have Game Pass on SteamOS. I understand why it's not there. I mean, after all, both Microsoft and Valve need to run their own businesses, but from a user perspective, it would be great to have access to all of those games all in one without having to fiddle around with which operating system you're going to use in order to play certain games or use certain services. So when it comes down to it, my biggest gripe is really just a software-related thing that is typical when it comes to that console-like experience. You can't play every Xbox game on PlayStation and vice versa, so it's kind of expected, but man, in a perfect world, I would love to be able to play every single game I could on my Steam Deck.
Game Pass on SteamOS would be exceedingly cool, although at $30 a month, I'm less interested, but I'm sure a lot of people would sign up for Game Pass if they could play all of those games wherever they want. I'm sure that the comments down below will be like, well, you could stream it using Game Pass streaming or Xbox Cloud Gaming or whatever it is that they call it. And I have to say, Xbox Cloud Gaming is the worst of all of the streaming versions that I've ever used. Anyway, getting off point here. Thanks for the answer, Russ. Rudy, tell everyone about your channel and what you would change if you were in charge.
I'm Rudy. I am bald, and I review plenty of tech on my channel. Baldly Rudy. It kind of makes sense, right? So yeah, Steam Decks, PC handhelds, pretty much any mobile powerful tech that's out there. But I started off with the Steam Deck and kind of just kept on going from there. I fell in love with reviewing tech. I would probably have to say in this day and age, and don't kill me, but I think that we need a little bit more juice. We need a little bit more power to go into the Steam Deck. It doesn't need to be like a Steam Deck, 2 in terms of like generational performance, because I don't think we're going to see that at least for like another few years. I think that, even if it's like a Steam Deck, like 1.5 or something like that. But obviously with the way that the economy is and the way that things are going, I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. I think every single manufacturer that is out there, not just Valve, but every single one that is out there is, holding onto their purses to make sure that, this whole incoming hardware inflation thing with AI is, handled properly and that they come out on the other end fiscally sound. So it's tough. It's tough, but I think that one of the biggest things is I'm feeling how old the Steam Deck is when you compare it to other handhelds that are out there. Now, if I were to, find a game and, play it and it runs well on the Steam Deck, like Chronos: The New Dawn, for instance, where there's a whole Steam Deck preset and everything built in, then yeah, I'll play it on that handheld instead over, any of the other handhelds that I have, just because I like the way that the Steam Deck feels. It's comfortable, and just the whole layout and ergonomics and everything. It's a great, phenomenal handheld, but it still lacks a punch when it comes to titles that are out there. And, it could be for a slew of reasons, but modern titles, especially AAA titles, just struggle a little bit when it comes to them running on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, that makes me wonder if the Rampocalypse has significantly changed Valve's plans with Steam hardware. I know that the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame, they're coming in the first half of this year. But I wonder if Valve has decided to put whatever work they have on Steam Deck 2 on hold until after all of this nonsense blows over with AI, so it could be a while before we actually see Deck 2. I've seen people say just put a Z1E chip in there, and I get it, but I don't know that the Z1E chipset is enough of a punch-up to justify a new system yet. Well, let's move on to our next content creator.
Hi guys, it's Russ from Retro Game Corps.
Dude, everyone already thinks that Russ and Tech Dweeb are the same guy. Now people are going to go around saying that you are secretly Tech Dweeb. So tell everybody what your name is.
Former Target employee Bob Wolf here.
All right, in the last video in this series, you told us what you like about the Steam Deck. What do you wish was different?
I like the Steam Deck because it's easy to recommend, because it's among the most user-friendly of all of the PC handhelds. My least favorite thing about it is just how big it is. Now, since the Steam Deck has come out, there are a lot more handhelds that are a lot bigger and more unwieldy, and I don't like that either. But there's really no reason at this point in time why the Steam Deck can't be a nice little compact little guy. Sometimes it's nice having a big screen in your face. A 720p screen doesn't need to be that big. I'd much rather be playing all my little tiny indie games in a nice, neat little tiny form factor.
I agree that the deck is big, but I'd be hard pressed to wish for the screen to be smaller. In fact, I think the screen is the minimum size screen that I would want. A lot of time I've been reaching for the Legion Go S because it has the bigger screen, but I am also I'm so very old. And maybe it has something to do with that. So I guess that leaves me. What's my biggest gripe about the Steam Deck? And you just heard it. It's the screen size. If the bezels on the OLED deck were just a little bit smaller and we had just a tiny bit bigger of a screen, I think it would be so freaking nice. And before you go, just a heads up, I'm going to link the two videos on screen right now. The top one is what we all like about the Steam Deck. And right now, the one on the bottom is my podcast. But if I have a third video in this series coming soon, and if you're watching this later, then that video will also be linked instead of the podcast. Anyway, thanks for watching. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, and I'll see you next time.